Inspired by the novel Crime and Punishment written by Fyodor Dostoevsky, Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud wrote something about it. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, remarked in a letter to his friend, the writer Stephen Jewett, that Dostoevsky cannot be understood without psychoanalysis. He illustrates it himself in every character and every sentence. Freud regarded Dostoevsky as one of the greatest literary psychologists in history, second only to Shakespeare. As a psychoanalyst, Freud attempted to unearth and identify the myriad submerged voices and desires in the unconscious of his patients. Crime and Punishment mirrors this process by probing the multiple and often contradictory motivations in the mind of Raskolnikov. Rather than trying to discover who committed the crime as a detective or mystery novel might do, Crime and Punishment asks a more complex question. Why did Raskolnikov commit murder? No previous novel had so relentlessly sought the motivation for a character's action. Raskolnikov identifies a number of possible reasons for the murder. He needed money. He wanted to rid the world of a louse. He wanted to prove he was above society's definitions of duty and conscience, noting as well that his act was prompted by pent-up rage, a response to his feelings of powerlessness and his alienation from the community. Porfiry Petrovich, the police official investigating the murders, takes an interest in easing Raskolnikov's tormented psyche. Rather than forcing a confession which he believes would not be beneficial, Porfiry uses conversation to help the murderer discover some of his hidden motivations. The prototype of literary detectives who were fluent in criminal psychology, Porfiry is also the first counselor to offer another character a talking cure, a nickname for psychoanalysis. Freud often said that the poets discovered the unconscious before he did. Like Freud, Dostoevsky saw tremendous significance in dreams as manifestations of the unconscious. When Raskolnikov murders the pawnbroker, it is not in a state of lucidity and rationality, but in a dream-like trance, demonstrating Freud's later premise that dreams contain desires too difficult to express in waking life. Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov was the subject of Freud's essay Dostoevsky and Parricide, 1928, which analyzed the Russian writer's psychology. In this article, which many find deeply flawed, Freud attempts to locate the guilt Dostoevsky felt regarding the death wish he held for his father, who was murdered by his serfs when Dostoevsky was 18. Freud believed that the Oedipus complex was the fundamental human drama and saw it as no coincidence that three masterpieces of world literature, Hamlet, Oedipus, Rex, and the Brothers Karamazov, is centered on the murder of a father. The Übermensch. Raskolnikov is a familiar literary and philosophical type, the intellectually gifted but socially disconnected student who views himself as above society and its law. In creating Raskolnikov, neither the first nor the last such character, though perhaps the best known, Dostoevsky was influenced by novelist Ivan Turgenev and literary critic Dmitry Pisarev. In Turgenev's Fathers and Sons, 1862, Bezarov, a student, espouses radical nihilistic views about society and feels he is superior to those around him. Pisarev, in his essay Bezarov, published the same year, exalts the character's disregard for the law and proposes that, for the most exceptional members of society, murder is always an option. This character type also forms the basis of Roth. Alfred Hitchcock's 1948 film about a perfect murder. The story is loosely based on a real-life slaying by two University of Chicago students, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loewe. The concept of the Übermensch, German for overman, has frequently been used to explain the character of Raskolnikov. Friedrich Nietzsche first developed the idea in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a highly influential philosophical work published in multiple parts in the 1880s. In it, the philosopher Zarathustra comes to earth to urge mankind to emulate the Übermensch, a hypothetical individual Zarathustra sees as the pinnacle of human potential. The Übermensch possesses a will so strong that he is completely self-determining. He ignores the morality and prejudices of society, overcomes disease, and disdains the false security of religion. He sublimates his baser human desires, such as the sex drive, to stronger, more creative outlets such as art and philosophy. Raskolnikov puts forward a similar idea of the extraordinary man in his article on crime, which Porfiry has read, and uses his extraordinary man theory to justify his murder of the pawnbroker during his conversations with Porfiry. However, Raskolnikov lacks the primary quality Nietzsche identifies in the Übermensch, the superhuman will to power. Raskolnikov performs his societal transgression not as a powerful act of will, but with a monomania that makes the murder practically involuntary. Raskolnikov also lacks the independence from religion and an unimpeachable health of the Übermensch. While Nietzsche had not read Crime and Punishment before writing Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he later came to admire the work greatly. In an odd convergence of art and real life, in 1889 he acted out one of Crime and Punishment's most memorable scenes. Incoherent and emotionally disabled, Nietzsche, witnessing the mistreatment of a horse in Turin, Italy, ran to the animal and took it in his arms. His action echoed Raskolnikov's dream in chapter 5 of part 1, in which a young boy kisses the lips and eyes of a bloody horse beaten by the drunken Mikolka. The episode in Turin was the dramatic beginning of the complete mental breakdown that defined the final decade of Nietzsche's life. Existentialism. Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus, French writers associated with the diverse philosophical movement known as existentialism, were heavily influenced by the work of Dostoevsky. An exploration of freedom from external laws and its incumbent angst connects the work of the three writers and forms the basis of the existentialist discussion. In his 1946 lecture, Existentialism is a Humanism, Sartre calls a line spoken by even Karamazov, in the brothers Karamazov, if God does not exist, everything is permitted. The starting point of all existentialist thought. Sartre insists that a person's actions can never be explained by human nature or determinism. Rather, he posits man is perpetually free to do what he likes and therefore is responsible for all his actions. Sartre's short novel Nausea, 1938, and his philosophical work Being and Nothingness, 1943, are central documents of existentialism. Crime and Punishment depicts Raskolnikov agonizing over questions of motive and responsibility that Sartre eventually addresses with existentialism. Why did he commit his murder? Should he be punished for it? Are some men more free than others? By the end of the novel, Raskolnikov has not found a good reason for having murdered the pawnbroker. Instead, he repents his crime, seeking solace in God. Raskolnikov does not discover the existential truth that there was no good reason for killing her, which may have provided him some comfort. In his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, published in 1942, Camus confronts the problems inherent in the discovery that life cannot be explained in terms of reason. He rejects both religion, such as that in which Raskolnikov believed, and suicide as responses to that terrible discovery. Instead, he believes that embracing the absurdity of human life is the key to finding happiness. He fleshes out his notion in his short novel The Stranger, 1942, in which the main character lives as he pleases because the world refuses to provide him with meaning. Like Raskolnikov, Marsold commits a senseless murder. Once on trial, he refuses to provide any motive for his deed. In illustrating the existentialist argument that it is irrational to attempt to affix meaning to actions awaiting execution, he realizes that his life has meant nothing and neither will his death. The certainty of death and meaninglessness frees Marsold from the burden of hope, and he is happy. Dostoevsky's early novella Notes from the Underground also figures heavily in the history of existentialist thought, with some scholars calling it the founding document. In it, the solitary underground man attacks determinism and finds meaning in freedom, while also acknowledging the suffering freedom causes. Crimes and Misdemeanors by Woody Allen. Crimes and Misdemeanors, 1989, is Woody Allen's most successful attempt at blending a dramatic plot with a comedic one. The serious or crimes storyline revolves around an upper middle class ophthalmologist, Judah Rosenthal, played masterfully by Martin Landau, publicly honored for his contributions to science and humanity. Judah is a fake, and he knows it. Not only has he rejected his father's Jewish faith, he has also managed hospital funds in a less than ethical way and is having an affair with Dolores, a flight attendant played with frantic pathos by Angelica Houston. It is possible to see Judah, who is possessed of a self-serving illusion of superiority and distance from the real world, as a modern-day Raskolnikov, as his mistress becomes increasingly upset and threatens to expose Judah's indiscretions. Judah calls on his brother Jerry Orvak, who has mob connections to orchestrate a hit on her. Judah avoids punishment, but in a way that comments on Dostoevsky's novel In the Coda. Judah meets the documentary film director Cliff Ellis's familiar on-screen persona, who has been at the heart of the comic or misdemeanors plotline at a wedding party. Under the pretense of talking about a movie idea, the two have an existential discussion concerning the possible consequences, spiritual and punitive, of committing murder. Judah, now happy, relates his own real-life experience, framing it as idle conjecture. What if, he poses to Cliff, after the initial agonizing pangs of remorse, the guilt just went away? In this intriguing film, Woody Allen reconceptualizes Dostoevsky's themes within the context of today's faithless, comfort-seeking world, and in effect turns crime and punishment's outcome on its head. Without morality and a firm sense of God, ideas and processes like punishment, forgiveness, and redemption prove to be pointless.